Good afternoon. Welcome once again to the Dick Game Line. On today's show, we'll be picking our Six Nations team of the opening weekend, and we'll be asking just how good or bad are Ireland ahead of this weekend's game against Wales. Simon Thomas and Matthew Southcombe are here to do just all that. And of course, we want your input, so please do get your questions and comments coming in. Matt, you weren't with us yesterday. We talked about the Wales team selection, which is coming up on Thursday quite a bit. There was a lot of love for Johnny McNicholl yesterday, not so much for George North, and that's annoyed you, I understand.
I hear he's got something to get off his chest.
I saw it on Twitter.
First of all, I'm very surprised at you, John, as the mediator of this show. The lack of balance that has been... Yeah, no, I've kept my counsel the last few days, but I've seen a lot of things said and written, and I just feel like we've been a little bit unfair here. So if we're talking about Nick Tompkins starting in the centre, then we'll start looking at Johnny McNicholl or George North on the wing. Yeah. Simon, I know you said it was a difficult decision based on what you'd seen on Twitter and things like that, but for me, it's really not. You look at the stats: George North, eight carries, 115 metres. One missed tackle in the outside centre channel, which we all agree is the most difficult channel to defend on a rugby field. One try as well, one disallowed. Johnny McNicholl, I think, was 7 carries for about 65, 70 metres. 6 missed tackles, 3 of them in the second half, one-on-ones, that if George North had missed, we'd have all been here with the pitchforks out. They were bad missed tackles. I thought he faded. I thought he struggled with the pace. He was blowing in between phases in the second half. I know what we're saying about the second distributor. I don't like doing this to Johnny McNicholl, by the way, but you boys have made me do this. But I don't see what he actually did tangibly to impact the game. Yes, he came in at that second receiver, but I didn't see him making searing breaks. He went across the field a little bit, but perhaps he found out that the gaps at regional level are not there at international level. I just think in terms of impact on the game, we all eulogised at the way that Nick Tompkins straightened up and put North away for his disallowed try that was brought back. North did exactly the same thing in the first half to put Halfpenny and then Adams away. The only reason Wales didn't score on that occasion is because Halfpenny dropped a kick that went through. So, we've got to be fair to these people, and I just kind of feel like we're not holding McNicholl to the same standard that we hold George North. And I think that's across the board as well. I think North is a lot expected of him because of the success he had when he was younger. But I thought he played very well on the weekend in a difficult role. And I think if it comes down to McNicholl or North on the wing on Saturday, it has to be North.
I think in fairness, the thing I'd say to that is when we were talking yesterday, we did talk quite a bit about McNicholl being a high-risk, high-reward player. In that, if you look at what he's done for the Scarlets over the last 3 years, everyone has seen that the try scoring and what he can offer creatively. But the one thing that has been said about him is that he can be found out sometimes defensively in the high ball. And we did say that yesterday. He missed 5 or 6 tackles. He was bumped off a couple of them quite easy. So we have looked at that. And I think I said myself yesterday, it's a really hard call, I think, because McNicholl does offer something different in terms of the number of involvements you get from him on the wing. We've talked a lot about that with George in the past, where the need to try and ideally get him more into the game. The way McNicholl plays, he does rove a bit more and he does pop up in different positions. So if they're looking for someone to do that in the wing role, you could see why they might go for him. To be honest with you, I'd be quite happy with either of them playing there. I think George North, he's still such a strong carrier, 40 test tries, did nothing particularly wrong at all in 2 different positions of the weekend. But it's not our call, really. And I think that McNicholl is somebody that Pivac knows well, Stephen Jones knows well. They know what he brings. And it's a balancing act, isn't it? If they feel that perhaps he offers more all-round involvement because of the way he plays, his ability to pop up in unusual places, little arc-in runs, chip over the top, or do they want someone who's a really experienced test winger, really solid, going forward with the ball in hand, and make strong carries? There's a lot of good things in terms of his predatory nature in North. That's the decision they've got to make, isn't it?
Indeed. What do you think they will do then? Do you think they'll be of your school of thought, or?
Well, it's like Simon said, they obviously like McNicholl. You hear Pivac referring to him as J-Mac in press conferences, so they obviously know each other well, know each other inside out. But I just think if McNicholl got exposed 3 times in the second half against Italy, what are Ireland going to do to him? We don't praise North for his passing when he deserves it because it's not fashionable. We like to criticise his defence because everybody does. But in fact, you look back to World Cup as well, he kept Redrada quiet on that wing, the guy who was causing chaos everywhere. Redrada went in field to cause his chaos. He didn't get around North. North defending the 13 channel against Italy, again, 1 missed tackle. I just think that
What do you think the niggle with North is then, with some a proportion of supporters, pundits maybe? Is it because he was such box office back in 2013
that's exactly right. If he gains 10 metres, why didn't he gain 20? If he scores one try, why didn't he score two? It's always been the way with North, and it's because of the success he had when he was younger. But let's not forget, 92 caps, 40 tries for his country. You don't get that many caps and score that many tries without having something special. So I think it is very much the success he's had in his career means that he is held to a different standard to some players.
Let's be honest now. The Welsh public, the rugby mad Welsh public, every year or so they need someone, don't they? You've had Cuthbert in the past, you've had Priestland in the past, you've had Biggar in the past, Neil Jenkins 20 years ago. It happens. There'll be a momentum thing, won't there, which gathers and says, oh, North is the one who's getting it now. And over the last 18 months, he's the one who's had it. He's the one who's had criticism. Obviously, he had that time out with the concussion problems. Was out of the game for a while. It was a big thing for him coming back, especially taking the contact, and whether he was really so back to what he was. And people have seen maybe a couple of performances which are maybe a level below what you've been used to him in the past, and all of a sudden he becomes the bloke who gets the kick in. It happens in Welsh rugby. There'll be somebody else next year. George North has contributed a huge amount to Welsh rugby. Now, that doesn't matter when it comes to the selection this weekend, does it? Nick Nicholls will have been there 2 minutes. But if Pivac thinks McNichol is the man for the job, then that's his call. And yes, there's been the defensive issues, but Pivac more than anyone would know there's been a few lapses like that during his career, and has picked him. Now, will he pick him this weekend? At the end of the day, it depends what they want, doesn't it? Is there more positives than negatives by picking Nicol compared to North? Over to Mr. Pivac.
Indeed. You have been Mr. Pivac, though, over the last 24 hours, picking your team of the weekend, Simon, which hopefully we'll get up on screen shortly. This is from all the teams from the opening weekend, what you saw. So full-back, you've gone for the Frenchman after Anthony Boutier, after probably
the
greatest kick we've ever seen.
It wasn't just the kick.
Unbelievable.
It was an extraordinary thing, from 5 metres from his own line to 5 metres to the other. I see quite a few people, Lee Jarvis and all these people saying the return of the spiral kick.
Right up Jarvis Street, that, isn't it?
I mean, I've seen some great spiral kickers over the year. Gareth Davis was one when I was growing up. He could boot it absolute miles, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone kick it that far. And it wasn't just a case of it bouncing 50 metres. I mean, it landed sort of between the 10 metre and the 22, so it had already flown some 65 metres. Yeah. But it wasn't just that. He was solid all around. France have tried loads of fullbacks over the last 5 or 6 years. And this guy's no spring chicken. He's 27. But he's come in and he looks really solid. And when you've got a weapon like that, imagine if you had some wind behind him. You go out the stadium.
It was, with the roar from the crowd, and Sean Edwards was up on his feet.
So a momentum shifter, a real momentum shifter.
It was a real moment. Was it on the wings? Then you've got one of the Welshmen in your team, one of the two Welshmen. I think Josh Adams, an obvious choice, I suppose, on the one wing, and Johnny May probably not a really obvious choice on the other one. Great tries.
Adams again, as I said, if you take the Barbarians game in, that's 13 tries in his last 16 outings for Wales, which is such a ridiculous stat. And they weren't run-ins on Saturday either. When he took the first try, ride the tackle coming across from Thomas Alango in the corner. The second one was like a kind of reward for keeping his width as Sartor was drawn in onto Biggar. And the third one, that's the one that really struck me, because there are a couple of things about it. It was the predatory nature of spotting the line, steaming onto the ruck ball. And then he didn't just sort of crash through like a couple of backs. He went through a back rower and a prop. Not bumped the back rower out of the way and took the prop over the line. He is on fire at the moment. And in fairness, Johnny May's 2 finishes were outstanding. He had things to make amends for, because he committed the cardinal sin of stopping when there was the controversial knock on, and he let the guy go through him, but he did make amends. And those 2 finishes, you've got. I mean, I'm interested to see how it works out when Wales play England, whether they'll be going direct opposition to each other, But yeah, they are the 2 absolute prime predators in the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's whiz through the rest of them. I know you've got a press conference to go to, you guys, relatively shortly. So at centres then, Nick Tompkins. Matt, what do you think of the selection of Nick Thompson's and Sam Johnson, the Scot there in the midfield partnership?
Yes, difficult to disagree with a lot of Simon's team, to be honest. Certainly wouldn't disagree with him on Tompkins. I think he's made everybody's team of the week after a pretty impressive debut.
Yeah, DuPont at scrum half. Nobody's going to argue with that. Sexton, I know you've had a couple of messages about your selection of Johnny Sexton.
That's the one. I mean,
people thought
Dan Biggar. A few mentioned Nentamac. he wasn't sort of the sparkling best he's been, Johnny Sexton, but when you score all the points in a tight match, including the try, we picked a lovely line off a decoy in front of him. He's in his 35th year, but he proved in the weekend that he's still a match winner. And who's better, him or Biggar? Well, let's see this weekend.
Indeed, we will see this
head
weekend.
to head.
What about your pack then? Just, you don't have to go through each one by one. Just pick out the sort of standout forwards, the two of you. If you had to pick one forward in Simon's team that really stood out for you.
Yeah, I thought Olivon was amazing for France. I was, Simon's team is not as many Welsh boys as you might have thought, but the positions where you looked at, I think other players just played as well, really, like Tipperick, for example. Yeah. But you can't argue with Olivon.
For me, Stander, especially given what we've coming this weekend. Yeah. All the talk about Caelan Doris, the new kid on the block, unfortunately only lasted 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Stander had been moved to 6 to make way for him. Off goes Doris with HIA. Stander moves to 8 and reminds you, let's not forget, I think this guy's been top carrier in 2 previous Six Nations.
Yeah.
Again, his carry and his tackling the weekend. If the Irish scrum gets on top, we'll talk about that no doubt. Him off the back of the scrum is a mighty weapon. CJ Stander.
Okay, we'll finish up on Ireland. We'll talk about what we can expect in just a moment. Let me take a couple of comments really, because I've quite a few around McNicholl and North. Hannah saying McNicholl will improve. It was his first international game, but would go with North for the Ireland game. So agreement with you there. North is much better in defence, and with a fast attacking set of Irish backs due this weekend, it will be a totally different game, says Richard. Martin says we're going to need North's defence against Ireland. Also would like to see Rhys Zammit on the bench to catch out some tired Ireland legs. Not sure if we'll see that one. Philip says North does not run flat out around or through people. Look at the line break in the last 20 minutes. He just stopped. He doesn't back himself at all anymore. So a mixture of comments, but a fair bit of backing.
Largely supportive here. Quite surprised there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The majority opinion I have seen is North starting McNicholl on the wing.
Yeah,
on the bench rather. That's what I've seen as the majority opinion. Divided, but edging towards North.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll find out on Thursday. Now, the Ireland team though is actually this afternoon. Not too long after we finish here, about 2:15. I think Ireland name their team. What did we make of them? Because certainly the Irish media, from what I've seen in the last 24 hours or so, they're not particularly happy with what they saw from the team, and most of them think Wales are going to win.
They could have lost that game. I mean, if Hogg had held on to that ball, and then on top of that, right at the end, they were pummeling away at the Irish line. Yes, the Irish defence was very good, but Scotland asked them lots of questions. Their Scottish scrum was good. Ireland didn't really click. I mean, people were expecting that to be a comfortable win for them. They've lost Gary Ringrose now. Obviously, Henshaw comes in. They've lost Caelan Doris as well, so I think O'Mahony comes in there. That'll probably be the 2 changes. But they were probably a 6 out of 10 performance for Ireland at the weekend. So there's a lot of experience and a lot of power in that side still.
Ahead of the tournament, there's a lot of questions about Sexton and Conor Murray in particular. Do you think they'll stick with Murray and Sexton for the Wales game? They will, I'm pretty sure.
I would have thought so, yeah. And just touching on what Simon said, I think they become more dangerous now after the weekend because they know they wouldn't have played well. They're getting a lot of stick this week. It's kind of backs to the wall, even though they won. 2 years ago, Wales went out there, got bullied and got convincingly beaten. And that can happen to you in Dublin on any given day. So, I certainly wouldn't be counting any sort of chickens here. Wales are going to have to go out there, the front 5 in particular, the set piece, massive concern at the moment. But not only that, the back row around the fringes in tight. That's where Ireland can do some real damage. I'm not too worried out wide. But, 2 years ago, Wales were beaten comprehensively in the tight. So that's going to be a big area on Saturday.
Key factor against Scotland, the way they were refereed at the breakdown. They weren't allowed to get away with some of the things the Irish teams in the past have got away with. It meant Scotland were able to be much more competitive in that position. Now it's Romain Poite this weekend. Fascinating to see how he both looks at the breakdown and also the scrummage. Poite is someone who generally rewards dominant scrums. If in the first couple Ireland get a shove on, it could be a long day for Wales. Yeah, indeed. So Farrell's Ireland, not too much different from Schmidt's so far, fair to say?
Well, I wouldn't have thought so. It's difficult to pick out too much in the first few games, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on. But sure, we'll have a closer look at them later in the week. Yeah,
they're still a very strong side, and the worry with Ireland is if they get in that mood where they just get into your 22 and keep ball is a horrible place to be, Dublin, on a day like that.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there, I think, for today. Save your predictions for later in the week. Thanks for joining us. As always, thanks for all your comments and questions. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same place. We'll see you then.